I can't play right now. I have sitting group. Good morning, everybody. My name is Trudy. I'm happy to welcome you to our Sunday sitting group at InsightLA. And Ava is our moderator today. She'll be letting people in the next few minutes. And thank you, Ava. And we will be beginning in, we'll just take a few minutes. There are very few people here, so we'll take a few minutes for people to arrive. And I like to look at and see who's here in the gallery view while I'm reading. And also, please feel free to, to let us know where you're tuning in from. Mel and Hillary are from Tucson. Ava's in the high desert. And I am in Ram Dass's study on Maui. Okay. Rhode Island, yes. A spring snowstorm in South Dakota. Santa Monica. Orange County. Peruvian and Minnesota. Wow, that's a great one, Ritz. And Adam is here on Maui. I saw him the other day on Thursday. Adam came to meditation here in the garden at Ram Dass's house. And I haven't been mixing with other people, but I did have to go out and say hi to Adam, who is, it's just fun to see you in person, Adam. And Catherine, yes, love from Petaluma, love to you. Take another minute or two. Caribbean and Kansas, yes, that's our Katie. Bernard, do you live in Illinois? Of course, you probably can't even answer me because everybody's muted. Corte Madera, Corte Madera, Corte Madera. Oh, okay, visiting your father-in-law. Okay, so let's begin. Once again, welcome to our InsightLA Sunday sitting group. My name is Trudy, and I'm the founder of InsightLA. And I'm speaking to you from Maui, Hawaii. Hawaii is a state where the indigenous Hawaiian people have a living culture that is ongoing, even in the face of colonialism, ongoing Hawaiian culture that is palpable in some ways here. There's a feeling of respect for different cultures. So many people here from East Asia and the Philippines and from all over. So it's a feeling, I think, of a kind of welcome and tolerance. A welcome as long as you don't want to stay. If you're white from the mainland, you're welcomed to come and uh, enjoy things and spend your dollars, and please go home after that. Um, I was told this when I broke my back. I chose to come here and teach 2.5 weeks later, and so I was in a wheelchair being wheeled through the airport, and the man kindly pushing the wheelchair asked me how long I was going to stay, and I explained everything. And then he said, "We love people like you. We love when you come. We especially love when you go back home." So we talked about that, and I came to understand very clearly why that was so. Anyway, so this morning, I want to continue somewhat on the theme that Melissa introduced last week of the 5 spiritual faculties or indriyas, and I know she focused on faith. I think I'll speak more in a kind of overview. And I am speaking to you from Ram Dass's study. This is the room in which he just sat and met with students. Behind me, on the left of the screen, you can see where he was laid out after he died. And there's still, I don't know if you can see, there's still flowers there on that blanket. And then to this side, I don't know if you can see, hold on. Yeah, that pink chair, the one that has the blue portrait of him on it. That chair is where Ram Dass sat. And from there, he could look out the window and see the clouds. And you probably can't see, but in the distance, you can see the ocean. And he spent years of his life sitting in that chair and looking out the window. And that's where he met with people who came to talk with him or consult with him, students and friends from that chair. So I feel honored to be able to teach and share the Dharma with you from this seat in his study. And for those of you who may be new to InsightLA, we spend, the time is roughly divided into thirds where we sit together, we do a silent meditation, and then we have some teaching and then some dialogue and exchange with each other. So first we're going to meditate, and I want to invite you to find a relaxed framework for your body. We're going to sit for about a half hour. Untangle from the wires here. Yes, and I will do some guided meditation, but mostly just encourage us to be together in the quiet. After Ram Dass had his stroke, he suffered from aphasia, which made it hard for him to retrieve and express words, even though he knew clearly what he wanted to say. And so he was quiet a lot of the time, and he really appreciated those who could be with him in quiet and not be uncomfortable or, feel like you had to think of something to say or entertain him because he was silent. He really appreciated that. So in honor of being here today, I'm just going to do very lightly guided meditation, and mostly we'll sit together in the loving presence of our own being, which, whether you're feeling loving or not right now, simply by being here, by being alive, your body is supporting your life. And this is an expression of love and compassion of life itself. So let's sit together. We begin by taking a deep breath in and releasing. And another breath in and releasing. Breathing in the aliveness of this moment and breathing out any tension or nervousness that might be there. And now allowing the breath to breathe us in its own natural rhythm. Appreciating the breath that is so keenly attuned to the states of being of our minds and bodies and hearts. Appreciating the landscape of aliveness, the sounds of life around you, the play of sensations in the body, and the ebb and flow of breath happening all by itself, nothing to do, nothing you have to do or be, simply sit back or lie back, however, whatever posture you're in, and receive and enjoy each breath, each moment of this life we share. And steadying the sense of presence by being aware of the body sitting here, just the general sense of aliveness of the body. This helps stay connected to the present moment, the only moment where we actually live. Ding, ding, ding. Thank you, everybody, for sitting together. I don't have a bell here, as you could imagine. So as I was saying at the beginning, I'm speaking here from Ram Dass's study, and the reason I am, I'm actually not in the house. I'm staying in what's called an ohana, which is, I guess we would call it a mother-in-law unit. It's like a little, it's part of the garage that they made into a little retreat space right next to the house. And I was feeling overwhelmed, not just with the grief of losing my younger brother a month, which is now a month ago, but with the mess that was left behind with the big robbery after his death and just other things that need to be sorted out. And my assistant, Allie, has to move on and only gave me 2 weeks notice. So it's been a semi-retreat, and I'm happy to say it looks like I've found somebody, thanks to the generous love and support of Mark Coburg, our former director. He and I have stayed good friends, and he helped me find somebody new. So this has been a semi-retreat in the sense that I'm not in complete silence or anything, but to be in this place where you can still feel Ram Dass's loving presence. The energy, especially in this room, is so palpable because this room is only used, excuse me, for meditation and very occasional teaching. But it's a beautiful meditation room now. So I have been here for, I guess, I don't know, a week, 10 days. I've lost track of time. And I had promised you that I wanted to speak to you from this study after having some time of meditation. And I have to say too, that some of my most powerful spiritual experiences of connection and support have come from the love of this household run by Dasima, Ram Dass's 17-year companion, who oversaw and did his intimate care, as well as running the household of young men that were needed to lift him from his wheelchair to his bed to the toilet. He couldn't do those transfers, and it took 2 young men to move his body. So I call them the super monkeys because this place is called Hanuman Maui. Hanuman is a Hindu god that represents selfless service and the magic, magical transformations of selfless service. So I call them always the super monkeys, and there are still super monkeys here helping to maintain this place as a small ashram. They have built a temple, a mandir, on the land where they do practice every morning and evening. They have practices open to the public, meditations, I guess twice a week on Thursday and Sunday. So I might see Adam again later this afternoon if you're here, Adam. And it's the most supportive and loving atmosphere in which to begin to gather myself and fully grieve the loss of my younger brother, who had a complex and challenging life. He was a special being with special challenges. And I have, with the help of one of the super monkeys here, a young man who is really good at social media and interested in it in a way that I'm not, interested in its potential to help people transform their lives, not just gain followers, not just the PR aspect. Together, we are writing a love letter to my brother for each of the 10 days of this retreat. I think we're on day 5. And you can, somebody said, send me a link. I don't even know. I don't go on the social media. Jason just shares those comments with me, some of them. And but if you go on Facebook and Google Trudy Goodman, I don't think you could miss it. It's my photo is the one that's just a photo of lilacs. And so if it's something different, I think, for somebody who has the identity of Dharma teacher to share pretty raw process of grieving. And I do this in the service of everyone who's lost a loved one, but also to help destigmatize mental illness, as I talked about 2 weeks ago. So take a look at that if you're interested. And you can follow me. I'm not trying to sell anything or promote anything except loving awareness and the power of vulnerability and sharing it in community. You know, grief is very isolating because, and those, you know, probably all of you have lost a loved one at this point. And you know what it's like when you are heartbroken and life is going on around you, you know, and people aren't heartbroken, or at least not as acutely as you may be in that moment. And it can sort of drain the meaning out of the things that usually give you pleasure. And I think that's why in the Jewish tradition, there's a 30-day period after the 7 days of sitting and mourning that you aren't required to do anything social, because it's understood that that would be jarring and you wouldn't feel in sync with that. But then after 30 days, you're encouraged to little by little take part, you know, come back and take part in the activities of life together. There are so many, the Irish wake, the Jewish Shiva, there are practices traditionally that honor the need to grieve and to really plunge into the feeling and not avoid it through busyness, with the understanding that only then can the heart really be at peace. And the problem is that these days, very few people actually do these practices, and I'm included. I didn't do a formal Shiva. I wasn't brought up to be an observant Jew, but with COVID, all of this grieving is made harder, you know, because people aren't as physically connected in person as we have been at other times. So today I also want to continue some of the teaching that Melissa did last week about the 5 indriyas, the 5 spiritual faculties. And but first I want to share with you a poem that I feel captures the poignancy of what I was talking about, where, you know, you might be going through the biggest trauma of your life and the world goes on and the world goes on. And some of that is it's natural, and some of that even may contribute to what makes a true Buddhist practitioner. And I found this quote about Buddhist monastics and said, what distinguishes a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, and everything in between in terms of gender identification from an ordinary hero is that they are essentially sober and calm, that their view of the world is sweetly rational, that they avoid violence in the pursuit of their aims, and that their estimate, this last part I love, their estimate of their own role in the world does not greatly exceed their actual size in relation to the universe. Right? That your estimate of your own role in the world doesn't greatly exceed your actual size in relation to the universe, right? That grain of sand. So I want to read you a poem. Hold on. I do have it here. Hold on. Here it is. It's called the Musée des Beaux-Arts, which means the Museum of Beautiful Art. And it's by W.H. Auden. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. And I should say this poem was written inspired by the painting by Peter Bruegel called The Fall of Icarus. And that's one of the old masters that Auden is referring to. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. In Bruegel's Icarus, for example, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The plowman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone as it had to on the white legs, disappearing into the green water. And the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. Now you may remember the story of Icarus, how he wanted to fly up to the sun, his father, and he made these beautiful wings and he glued them with wax and he flew. His father cautioned him not to fly too high. But of course, being a young man, did he listen to his dad? No. He flew too high, the warmth of the sun melted the wax, the wings fell off, and he tumbled into the sea. Definitely a story about understanding humility and one's place in things. So this is from a Buddhist sutra. Speaking to, they always begin monks, but speaking to practitioners. There are these 5 faculties. Which 5? And here's how they translate them. We would say faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And here it's translated as conviction, persistence, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment. And so faith or conviction we can understand as confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, that they really do lead to the end of suffering in any given moment when we have been practicing them. Confidence in ourselves and our ability to practice, to trust that, the Buddha actually, the Buddha used all the faculties that everybody has in his own quest, and I really like that he didn't just resign himself, but he actually practiced and used all the the faculties, the gifts, the consciousness that everybody has to free his heart from suffering. So confidence in that is possible, and confidence that oneself, that we have what it takes, that we have the necessary ingredients, the equipment to wake up, and the ingredients, and a further confidence or faith that that the contents of this moment of experience, our being here together, you're listening to me listening to the sound of my voice, that any given moment of experience where we are awake to it and aware of it has everything we need. It is enough to wake up. And then persistence or energy, or we could say determination. For me, it's more like determination, that I'm not going to turn away, that I will respect the rhythm of grieving, for example. And I have to say, the weather here in Haiku is the perfect reflection externally of the internal process of grieving. Because sometimes it's sunny here and the hibiscus are in bloom and the wind's warm and it's beautiful weather. We would say a beautiful day. And then sometimes a little shower drifts through. If we're lucky, there's a rainbow. And then it pours rain, pouring rain. And then there's a patch of blue sky, but it's still cloudy out. And then the clouds come and the wind comes up and it's blowing so hard. I only brought one sweatshirt and I had to get some sweatpants and another sweatshirt. It's chilly and cold. But through it all, there's this, the changing weather is definitely a metaphor for the changing conditions of everybody's mind and heart, but particularly this grief process, because when it starts to pour, for me, it just feels like what happens when I let myself really fully feel that wave of emotion and just sob. Or when I think of what happened after my brother died, just scream. And that's why the ocean is my refuge. It always is. I love the water, but it's especially my refuge right now. And especially if I put on a snorkel mask and look down into the water. And it's amazing. I don't know I posted about this. You can cry while you're snorkeling, which I had never known before. You can cry and nobody can see you. You have total privacy, even if your swim buddy is nearby. And when I look down into the water and see this whole other world of fishy life and coral reefs, and it also brings perspective and how the water holds me up, just the way the Dharma holds us up. So determination and the energy to meet experience with our whole body, with our whole heart, with as much presence as we can muster. And we need mindfulness to be able to do that. Of course, we need to be aware of when we're not connected to things and when we've drifted away, and we need to know how to focus and bring ourselves back into presence. And this doesn't mean that you have to develop, deep samadhi, that you have to keep your attention pinned to the breath to develop, these jhanic states of absorption. In order to have discernment or wisdom, which in this context really refers to knowing which turn in the road you should take, which is skillful and leads to good things in your life, and which is maybe not so skillful and could lead to harm to yourself or somebody else. That's the kind of discernment or wisdom that's being talked about here. And all we need is enough mindfulness and concentration to be aware of what's happening internally, and to be able to take that backward step into just being the witness of our life and being the witness of our losses and being the witness of our pleasure and joy, all of it. So all of us are endowed with these faculties. And when we engage with them and begin to, and you already are just by being here, when we engage with them, they transform and they become what are called balas, or spiritual powers. Then they really work to help us stay in loving presence with ourselves, which inevitably helps us stay in loving presence with others. And I do want to give I want to give a shout out to Ram Dass, who really evolved in his teaching from seeing grief in more the classical way, that it's a misunderstanding of our oneness, that it's really kind of a mistake of ourselves, seeing ourselves as separate from each other when we're really not, or believing in a separate self when there really isn't one. The self that we're cultivating here is the self that is awareness and presence of me-ness, being here-ness with you, now-ness. and he evolved from that kind of classic teaching to telling people, you know, grieve, and then grieve some more, like do it, feel it fully, because only then, when we've really allowed ourselves to be that vulnerable and to let our hearts be broken, only then can we actually be fully present and experience the powers of faith and confidence, of determination and perseverance, of mindfulness and presence, of concentration and focus and discernment and wisdom. So thank you for that evolution, Ram Dass. And I want to give another shout out to my swim buddy, Dasima, his faithful companion, who served him with, her practice was to surrender with utter devotion to serving and caring for Ram Dass and running the household. And such practical wisdom and presence. And I tease her and call her Wendy and the Lost Boys, but the boys aren't lost. There's 6 young men in the household, and Dasima, and she guides their practice and work to sustain this place with so much patience and good humor, more than I think I could ever muster in the situation. And they love her, and a couple of them especially have just vowed they will care for her until she dies, walk her home, and she's the only person my age I know who's willing to stay in the water as long as I like to stay in the water, which is sometimes almost 2 hours. On the chilly days, she gets cold, but anyway, I just want to give a shout out to her, my dear friend and swim buddy, for also keeping Ram Dass's legacy going here in the house. Love, Serve, Remember is the platform that shares his teaching and doing a fabulous job of making sure that old tapes, the historical things are available, as well as all the present teachings and the teachers who teach with him and who continue his teaching and retreats, even though he's no longer here. So yes, acknowledging Love, Serve, Remember Foundation, but also this place, Hanuman Maui. You can feel his presence, his living presence, which is very different. And I'm grateful to them for the work and the struggle to keep the place going. I will just say on a shoestring. So this is some of what I want to share with you this morning. And love to have some, excuse me. Some dialogue, some conversation with some of you. I like to teach in interaction, share in interaction with you when I can. And yeah, it's a windy day here, kind of overcast where I am. And I can see the surf in the distance calling to me. And it's a drive to the beach from here, but there's usually somebody who's willing to go. So if you have something that you would like to share from your own practice, a reflection, doesn't have to be anything about anything I've shared, but the truth of your heart at this time and in this moment. If you don't have anything to share, I'll read another poem to you that being with the young men here in the household has made me appreciate. Oh, okay, Clark. So you can't really unmute yourself. We have this new system because of the Zoom bombers that we had before, where Ava has to unmute you.
I think I'm unmuted now.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Thank you, Trudy. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for the times that you've helped me and our family when we've gone through deep difficulties. And I'm very touched by that. And it's kind of amazing to see the rhythm of life that we do float through difficulty and response and engagement, and life is ever changing. And so I guess if we look at difficulties, they're kind of coming and going all the time. But you were so helpful to me when I was in some really dark difficulty and thought that I might lose my son. And for the time being, he's made it through. We never know. For the time being, everything is beautiful. And I'm just sending you love for this time, as difficult as it is, to say that those of us that have enjoyed your care and your comfort would like to give you that in return. And thank you.
Thank you, Clark. I feel it. Thank you so much. And you saw the heart. I just am so loving hearing that for now things are okay. What a relief. May it continue.
Yeah.
May he continue to grow in all 5 faculties.
Yeah. Well, he's very much on his path, and that is both the teaching of Al-Anon that's helpful, as well as
Great.
all of what we talk about. And having faith, as you were discussing in the 5 faculties, this faith, this trust, this belief in the universe. That has been the gift for me, is to be able to say to myself, can you stand back and let the universe unfold and let him walk his path? And, at moments it's scary, but it's a beautiful thing. I mean, your circumstance, losing a younger brother, it's a more impactful just moment. But, we have these moments, whatever they are, and we wind up walking through them and trusting the universe, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Clark. My life was more entwined with my brother than it might ordinarily have been as adults because of his challenges. So yeah, thank you. Catherine, hi. Happy to see you. Are you unmuted?
I think I am now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So just wanted to say, Trudy, just, holding you in your process with love and confidence that you will move through all these different stages and you will make beautiful use of what you experience to share that with other people. I know that. We're so lucky that you're willing in this, social media way to share your process, because that I think will be really inspiring.
It's so interesting, Catherine, because I've gone through some really ego cringing moments about sharing that publicly. Sure. My sister is a really private person, and she was just like, you're you and we're so different and you can do it, but I don't want to even hear about it or see it. It's just, which I respect. I respect that too. But it's been helpful to remember that the ego cringing and getting self-conscious is just as much ego as the ego getting all puffed up and I'm amazing and I'm the goddess of giving and I'm going to share on social media. It's just two sides of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And the poem that I want to share with you all before we stop about this kind of toxic masculinity that I'm watching the young men here struggle with. They're young, grapple with. Yeah, they're young and they have, open hearts. They want to keep their hearts open. And anyway, I'll share that after I talk with Meredith. Thanks, Catherine. Meredith, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Morning or hello. Yeah. First of all, Trudy, I just so want to thank you for sharing Ramdas's room with us. It's astonishing to me just how I can feel it. And I'm so grateful. The depth and the I don't know the words necessarily, but whatever it is that helps me drop into deep quiet, just the love of that, it's very unusual. So I really, totally, really want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Meredith. And I'm very aware of what's going on in the world, that we're in a war and the pandemic, people are done with the pandemic, but it isn't done with us yet. Actually, people are still getting sick. Can you mute yourself again, Meredith?
Oh,
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. No problem. And people are still getting sick and so forth. And, we all paid attention to issues of race and the unrest that happened after the murder of George Floyd. But these issues are still going on, and innocent, vulnerable Black people are still being murdered. And, people are struggling to have food. I have a friend who told me that the line at the food bank up north where she lives in Trinity, that the line at the food bank is so long. I think I mentioned this the other day, that she got out of her car and started dancing, turned up the music in her car and started dancing. And, people were just so grateful and uplifted instead of this like grim long wait for food that isn't even the food you might choose to eat. Anyway, I'm aware that young people too are hanging on by a thread after 2 years of isolation. And people are, I credit the 12-step programs for being able to leave my previous marriage, somebody that I adored and who was an addict, and it was just drawing me into more and more and more painful drama. And I am aware of people just, white knuckling it for 2 years and really having a hard time coping in balanced ways. And we're hearing about the mental health crisis for kids and the mental health, well, not just teenagers, adults too, and the disproportionate number of people of color. I think the statistic for Black teenagers versus white teenagers, it's just strikingly unjust and unfair. Even though I think the white kids actually do more completed suicides, but these are really terrible, terrible things to be aware of, and I am aware of them. And yet, right now, for me, I need to attend to the personal, and I think to do it in a way that acknowledges the universality of loss, to do it in a way that acknowledges the universality of grief. Who among you has not lost a loved one by now in your life, even if it was your family dog? And I don't mean to diminish the intensity of losing a family pet, or your beloved cat, or whoever it may have been. I have Leela here at my feet, the dog in this household, and there's some cats too. And so who hasn't suffered a loss by now, And So what I think what for me, I'm just honoring this moment in my life as one particular life in all lives that have ever been and ever will be. And yeah, and Laura is reminding us of the story of Kisa Gautami, the woman who lost her, I think he was a 3-year-old boy, and in the intensity of her grief, she carried the boy's dead body to the Buddha and said, I hear you can perform miracles. Revive my boy, please, please, please. Tears pouring down her face. You can imagine her desperation. And he said, I will, but you need to go first and get a mustard seed from the home of, everybody in this town. I give you one mustard seed, but here's the thing, here's the deal. This is the hard part. It has to be from the house of somebody who has not lost a loved one, who hasn't experienced and mourned the death of somebody in their family. So of course she goes from house to house, and nobody can give her a mustard seed. And finally, it dawns on her. She realizes in her heart, we are all vulnerable. We are all in this together, although we may feel in this age of just stunning divisiveness and polarization that we're not. Deep down, we are all spiritually the same size. We're all headed in the same direction. And we all have this one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver said, to live. So is there anybody else who, I'm going to look in the chat and see if somebody has a question. Yeah, thank you for bringing that forward, Laura. Okay, so Rick has a question. Can you offer some soothing thoughts on a beginner's tendency to explore this practice in search of knowledge and the eventual need for that practitioner to settle on faith instead? Could that practitioner be you, Rick? You're not a beginner, but maybe you're just being super humble here.
Sometimes it feels like I'm a
bet it's
perpetual
you.
beginner.
I couldn't hear you. Could you speak up a little?
Sometimes it feels like I'm a perpetual beginner.
Well, that's actually a good thing. That's actually a good thing. As you know, in this practice, we revere the mind of the beginner that is open and curious and eager to learn, open to possibilities. And yeah, we do. So that's not some kind of false humility. It's real. Even you've been practicing for years and years and years. I remember, me too, I had been practicing for years and years. In fact, even sometimes when I was teaching, I would go into retreat and I think, oh, right, this is what meditation is. This is what Zazen is. Yeah. So in search of knowledge, well, the mind is always going outside itself, looking for knowledge, looking for certainty, looking for reassurance. My mind is no exception, especially at times of rapid growth or times of loss. I want to hear from Ram Dass. I want to hear from my friend Dasima. I want to hear from people who have some wisdom to share and some love to share. And that's fine. The mind, our minds do that. It's normal, it's natural, it's nothing to be ashamed or reproach oneself for. But where faith comes in is having the confidence that, and it's not, this is hard won, it's not easy, but having the confidence that in your own heart, you will find the knowledge that we call prajna, wisdom, which is the intuitive knowledge, or panya in Pali, the intuitive knowledge of which path to take, which way to go. And, I'll be honest with you, I've been really, for myself, unsure. Should I pursue Ecuadorian justice since I know who committed the crime pretty certainly? Or should I let it go? At this point in my practice life, I have the tools to spiritually bypass things if I want. I don't want to, but I'm not sure what my wise action is. And I'm going to consult with somebody later today. Oh, sweetheart, excuse me, Leela needs to go out. Okay. Come on. Come on. Go ahead. Sometimes we do need knowledge, we do need to consult with somebody. But ultimately, I think the only soothing thoughts I would say is it is inevitable, Rick. It is inevitable if you keep practicing that you will grow in confidence and trust in yourself. It's just, and you can tell other beginners that too. And that's where, yeah, it does. You can call it faith, but I like confidence because I know that for myself, I lacked confidence for so many years of my adult life. It's just sad when I think back on it, and made relationships that were based on my lack of confidence in myself. And so eventually you have the confidence to trust yourself. Like, I'm going to post something, I don't know which day I will, but I'm going to post something about I am trusting myself at this point. Okay, I've done tons of retreats where you have strict schedule and austere practice, and you follow the schedule, and the schedule becomes your teacher because you don't feel like it, or you're too tired, or you want to take a nap, but you do it instead. You follow the schedule and you learn about yourself. It's like any kind of training. People who are athletes learn about their minds that way, and mental training is part of it for them too. So I've done that, but this retreat isn't like that. This retreat, I'm honoring what I need in any given moment. And sometimes it's corn chips, and sometimes it's hot chocolate, and sometimes it's playing with Leela, and sometimes it's swimming. It's not always meditating. Sometimes I come down with my tear-stained face from this study, and I tell whichever there's usually one or two of them in the kitchen. I tell them, I'm receiving hugs. I need hugs. We need hugs and affection and love when we're grieving. So trusting yourself and trusting the goodness of your own heart's intention to wake up and honor and respect who you are and what your basic human needs are. And the more you do that, the more you will be able to extend that to others. It's just part of the natural process. And I saw it too, because when I was picked up at the airport, Jason, one of the super monkey who's actually helping me with the posts, he came in at the same time from his family home and on the mainland. And when we were riding from the airport, Dasima was driving us back to the house here. We drove through this little town called Paia, near Haiku, which is very remote actually. And there was a man lying on the ground by his wheelchair, and we stopped, and it was a man who's experiencing houselessness. He's unhoused, and he had an injury, and his wheelchair had no arms, so he couldn't get back up in it. And so Jason helped him up to get back in it, and we talked with him. He had no teeth. He was really talking about his situation and how hard it was. And it turned out that there was an extra wheelchair in the garage with arms that had belonged to Ramdas. We keep his main wheelchair that he used in the living room, which is actually a kind of temple, and we keep it there with his portrait on it, just like his pink chair that I showed you before has. You can see that blue portrait on the pink chair. But there was this extra wheelchair, and so we took it to Raymond. And honestly, I think there was magic in that wheelchair. He's doing so much better. His leg is healing. The other chair is just used as a chair by folks in the houseless community, a small group of people that just are there, taking shelter under the gas station roof when it pours. And I don't know why I started to tell you that story, but there was some reason. It's heartwarming anyway. I can't remember. But there was that poem. I want to read you this poem. It's an interesting poem to me. And let me see, I want to find it for you. Hang on, hang on. We have, just bear with me for a minute. I am going to find it. Because the internet is not so great here. I'm plugged directly into the Ethernet. Well, maybe I'm not meant to read it to you. I thought I had set it aside here. Hang on. Oh, here it is. This is a poem by Red Hawk, and it's called The Never Ending Cereal. When I was a boy, the Varsity Theater was a mile from our house. Saturdays, we were allowed to walk there. And for a dime, we got a cowboy double feature and a long running serial, which involved an incredibly stupid, weak, and helpless, but beautiful woman upon whom unimaginable indignities and cruelties were enacted by darkly evil men with mustaches. Week after week, we waited for her to die, but at the last impossible moment, tied to railroad tracks for what reason we could not possibly imagine, and with a fast freight bearing down upon her, a heroic white man, he was always white, and so was she, leaped onto the tracks and ripped her from the jaws of impending death. Imagine what the young girls in attendance were led to believe about their femininity, and how, as long as they lived, they were trained never to doubt, but to wait for that white man. And when he never showed up, imagine their disillusionment, the bitter sorrow of their loneliness and despair. And the young boys in attendance, we who sat enthralled and believing, imagine the burden of our lives when we were unable, fumbling and shaking, to untie those ropes and were struck down by the thundering train. And I share this poem with the young men in this household who are, as I said earlier, kind of grappling with wise, strong masculinity and how to embody that in a culture that celebrates a more toxic form, which we can see in the violent racism, we can see in the wars, we can see in sexism, I mean, all the isms, the gender violence against people who have a different gender identity or whose bodies look or feel different. I mean, it goes on and on. And I take heart and I find hope in the existence of places like this, peopled by young people who really want to live a different kind of life and who believe that it's possible. So this is our time together today. And we just have a very few minutes. So why don't we just sit together for a couple minutes? I'll ring the bell to begin. Ding. So it's traditional at the end of a period of study and practice together that we offer the goodness of our practice to all beings everywhere without exception. May we and all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we be gifted with happiness and the causes of happiness. And yes, may we and all beings grow in love and understanding. So Ava, maybe you could post my social media links. I don't even know how to for the Facebook and the Instagram. I invite you all to follow me in this retreat. It's not to accumulate followers, but to share, just to share from the heart. Jack is going to be coming toward the end of the week to join me for a few days before I come home. And so I plan to see you next week. And I just offer you